This is the most important story you were never told. It is a story about the moment money, the very language of human value, stopped being real. It happened quietly, without fanfare or public debate, on a summer evening in 1971. While the world was distracted by grander headlines, the fundamental nature of our economic reality was altered forever, setting in motion a chain of events that now defines our modern age of debt, booms, and busts. The rules of the game were rewritten, and most of us never even realized the game had changed. For millennia, the concept of money was anchored in the tangible world. It was something you could hold, something with intrinsic worth, forged from the earth itself. Gold and silver, scarce and universally desired, became the ultimate arbiters of value. They were difficult to mine, impossible to counterfeit with ease, and finite in their supply. This physical scarcity imposed a natural discipline. A king could not simply wish more gold into his treasury. A nation could not spend what it did not possess. Money was a store of value, a direct representation of labor, time, and resources, bound by the unyielding laws of physics. To facilitate commerce, societies developed a more convenient medium, paper notes. Yet these were not money in and of themselves. They were merely claims, receipts for the real thing held in safekeeping. This system, refined over centuries, became known as the gold standard. A dollar, a pound, or a franc was not just a piece of paper. It was a promise, a solemn contract that it could be redeemed on demand for a specific weight of physical gold. This linkage tethered the abstract world of finance to the concrete reality of scarce resources, creating a global system built on a foundation of tangible trust and measurable value. But, on the evening of August 15, 1971, that foundation was fractured. Facing mounting economic pressures, including the immense cost of the Vietnam War and dwindling gold reserves, U.S. President Richard Nixon appeared on television. He announced that he was directing the Treasury to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. The word temporarily was a political masterstroke, a tranquilizer for the markets and the public. In reality, it was a permanent severance. In that single moment, the Bretton Woods system, which had governed international finance since World War II, was dismantled. The anchor was cut. With that televised address, the era of fiat money began. The word fiat comes from Latin, meaning, "let it be done," a decree. Money was no longer defined by its connection to a scarce commodity, but by the declaration of a government. Its value now rested solely on confidence and the authority of the state that issued it. The U.S. dollar, the world's reserve currency, was now backed by nothing but the full faith and credit of the United States government. The promise of gold was replaced by a promise of a promise, an abstract concept floating free from any physical restraint. This untethering unleashed a power previously unimaginable. For the first time in history, the creation of money was limited only by a keystroke. Governments and central banks were no longer constrained by their gold reserves. They could now conjure currency out of thin air to finance deficits, fund wars, and bail out failing institutions. Debt, once a metric of a nation's tangible obligations, became a tool of policy. The ability to create unlimited money became the ultimate instrument of control, concentrating immense and unprecedented power in the hands of a small, unelected financial elite. The most immediate and pervasive consequence was a phenomenon that had plagued empires of the past, but would now become a permanent feature of the modern economy: systemic inflation. When money can be created in infinite quantities, its value inevitably declines. Each new dollar printed dilutes the worth of all existing dollars. For the average person, this manifested not as a sudden shock, but as a slow, corrosive force. It was the silent thief that crept into every household, quietly eroding the value of savings, wages, and pensions year after year. This hidden shift was a stroke of strategic genius, whether by design or by accident. The system became intentionally complex, shrouded in jargon and arcane theories that were incomprehensible to the public. Concepts like quantitative easing, credit default swaps, and repurchase agreements became the lexicon of a new financial priesthood. While the average citizen still thought of money as something earned and saved, the architects of the new system were playing a different game entirely, a game of leveraged debt and abstract financial instruments where wealth was not created but engineered. The ripple effects radiated outward, reshaping the very structure of our society. Without the discipline of gold, the economy was subjected to increasingly volatile boom and bust cycles. Central banks, in their attempts to manage this new, unstable system, would flood the markets with cheap credit, creating speculative bubbles in stocks, real estate, and other assets. When these bubbles inevitably burst, they would respond with even more credit, sowing the seeds for the next larger crisis. This cycle became the new normal. This new monetary order also acted as a powerful engine of inequality. Those closest to the source of new money, large banks, financial institutions, and the well-connected benefited first. They could borrow cheaply and acquire real assets before the inflationary effects of the new money rippled through the broader economy, devaluing the wages and savings of ordinary people. It was a transfer of wealth on a historic scale, from the masses to the financial class, conducted silently and cloaked in the language of sophisticated economic policy. Decades later, we are all living within the architecture of that 1971 decision. Our perception of prosperity is largely a debt-fueled illusion, a grand edifice built on an ever-expanding mountain of credit. Entire nations, corporations, and individuals are now dependent on a system that requires perpetual growth and ever-increasing levels of debt simply to sustain itself. The numbers have become astronomical, reaching a scale that is disconnected from any rational measure of the real economy. Today, there are signs that this system is nearing its mathematical and psychological limits. With global debt at unprecedented levels and confidence in institutions waning, the Fiat experiment appears to be entering its terminal phase. The very mechanisms designed to prevent collapse, such as zero or negative interest rates and massive asset purchases by central banks, have lost their potency. The system, like a drug addict, requires ever larger doses just to stay functional, and the markets are beginning to question how long it can last. As we stand at this precipice, several future scenarios begin to materialize. One is a catastrophic collapse, a Minsky moment where confidence in fiat currency evaporates suddenly, leading to hyperinflation and a complete breakdown of the global financial system. Such an event would trigger social and political chaos on a scale not seen in centuries, as the very concept of money loses its meaning. It would be a disorderly and brutal reset, wiping out a generation of paper wealth. Another, more controlled path is a deliberate reset engineered by the world's governments and central banks. This could involve the introduction of new monetary rules, perhaps a global agreement akin to a new Bretton Woods. A key element of this planned transition is the development of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. These would offer governments an unprecedented level of surveillance and control over every transaction, allowing them to directly manage the flow of money, implement negative interest rates on personal accounts, and even program money with expiration dates to force spending. Then there is the possibility of reinvention, a future where new forms of money emerge from the ground up outside the control of the state. The rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, based on mathematical scarcity and decentralized networks, represents a direct challenge to the fiat model. Other proposals include currencies backed not by gold, but by a basket of commodities or a fixed amount of energy. This path represents a technological and philosophical rebellion against a centralized system, a search for a new anchor in a digital age. History moves in great cycles, and the story of money is no exception. The move from commodity money to gold-backed paper was a major shift. The severing of that link in 1971 was another. Each transition was profound, reshaping the landscape of power, wealth, and society itself. The fiat system, born in a moment of quiet decree, has run its course, and its unraveling is now underway. We are living through the final chapter of a 50-year experiment. A new system is coming, whether through collapse, control, or innovation. The fundamental rules that govern our economic lives are about to be rewritten once more. The last time it happened, almost no one noticed. Will we be paying attention this time?